Hi, my name's Rebecca Vidra. I'm a lecturer and director of undergraduate studies in the Nicholas School of the Environment at Duke University, and I'll be your natural sciences disciplinary consultant. In this first video, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we mean when we say academic writing in the natural sciences. Typically, we define the natural sciences according to its 5 major branches, which, as you see here, are chemistry, physics, earth sciences, biology, and astronomy. However, there are many hybrid disciplines, biochemistry being an obvious one, and there are also many interdisciplinary disciplines. So I am an environmental scientist, so not only do I bring together a few of the core branches of the natural sciences like ecology, biology, chemistry, and maybe even some physics and earth sciences, I also bring in some of the disciplines from the social sciences like policy, sociology, and sometimes history. So when I think about academic writing as a scientist, I need to be thinking very carefully about my audience from the beginning. Am I talking to a particular group of experts in ecology, for example, or a broader group of experts across disciplines? This will help me determine my language, the way I define terms, and even sometimes the sources that I will cite. I am more specifically a restoration ecologist. I've gotten to do some really exciting work restoring coral reefs in the Florida Keys. These images can show you part of that process. I've also worked in urban forests where exotic plant species have invaded and really changed the scope of the forests. And right now I'm starting a new project on the north shore of Kauai and the south side of Dallas, where I'm looking at some projects that incorporate ecological and cultural restoration. So in terms of academic writing, I'm already doing some of the prep for that writing, even though the actual writing up of my results from this research is years away. I'm starting to think about the questions, formulate hypotheses, and I'm already into the literature to see who's done this kind of work already. When we think of writing in the natural sciences, probably the first thing that comes to mind are lab reports, writing up the results of an experiment or an observational study that we've done. And to be sure, most of the writing focus and writing time that I spend and many natural scientists spend is on this form of writing, reporting our research results. These research results are peer-reviewed through a process I'll talk about in a few minutes extensively. We also spend quite a bit of our time writing grant proposals to get money to fund the research. So these 2 types of writing could be considered academic writing in the natural sciences. Many scientists also participate in research translation. This is the idea of taking your results out to a broader audience. And so some of us spend time writing things like policy memos, op-eds, and blogging. And we'll talk more about this when we talk about writing for the public in a few weeks. Academic writing takes a very standardized form in the natural sciences. The shorthand for this is the IMRAD. This is the sections of a scientific paper, which would be the introduction, methods, results, and discussion. This is very similar to the format used in many social science papers or academic writing as well. And it's fairly straightforward to know what goes in each section. A very important thing to note about academic writing is in the natural sciences is that the evidence that we use is data, the results of our research, the results of our study. And we put this data into context by doing an extensive literature review. This literature review takes place in the introductory phases of our research when we're trying to figure out what has everybody else found out, what has come before us. And then as we try to put our results into context, there's a whole nother phase of the literature review to try to connect our results to what has come before. The methods section is my favorite to write, probably a lot of people's favorite to write because it's very straightforward. It's a recipe, directions for how we did our research so that somebody else could repeat it. The results section is also easy to write in one hand and difficult in another. The results section is really all about the results, reporting the facts, and not doing any of the interpretation of those results. That interpretation takes place in the discussion or the conclusion sections. Again, the arguments are supported by evidence in academic writing that is data related, and we tend not to stray very much from what our data is telling us. So the interpretation that we do of our results, the conclusions that we draw from our results are not very far ranging. We tend to be very conservative in interpreting our results. And this is partly due to the peer review process, which is very challenging in the natural sciences, where our colleagues are evaluating our work, everything from how we situate our work within the larger conversation, how we've asked our questions, the methods we've used, the analysis and the results that we have obtained. So science tends to be criticized for moving forward at sort of a snail's pace, and this is partly due to our conservatism in the way that we interpret our results. The best way to learn about academic writing in the natural sciences is to go ahead and look at some of the papers that have been published in open access journals. If you have an interest in biosciences, in ecology, in physics, you will be able to find several papers published, several journals published in the open access realm. Ask yourself a couple of questions. How can I tell that this paper has been peer-reviewed? There are many ways to find this information out. Usually the journal information area will tell you that a little bit about the peer review process. Also, look to see what sources are cited within the paper. Can you get a good sense of the literature that this particular paper builds upon? And finally, it's interesting to see what papers have cited the work since it was published. This is a really interesting way to see the contributions of this particular paper, which may be sort of a very specific contribution to the conversation, to see how that contribution has been built on in subsequent research projects. There's a great website out there for you to learn more about the specifics of the writing process and some ideas for writing these particular sections, and you can find it here at this link. I recommend you also check that out. Thanks. Have a good day.